Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for the Cybercrime Support Network Trend Micro monthly webinar series. I'm Mark Batchelor. I'm the Vice President of Community-Based Programs here at Cybercrime Support Network, and I'll be moderating our panel of experts and friends to discuss some of the issues concerning kids, parents, and working from home. Very timely today. Before we begin, though, I want to inform you that this is being recorded. And it will be available on our YouTube page at Cybercrime Support Network on YouTube, as well as out on our Fight Cybercrime webpage. Demetria will also be chatting out resources and websites as they come up in our conversation, and we will share that with the audience via email sometime after this programming. So before we do anything, let's have our panel go around and introduce themselves. If you can just let us know who you are and what you do in the realm of cyber safety. We'll start with you, Patrick.
Well, great. Thanks so much for having me today. I am Pat Craven. I am the director of the nonprofit Center for Cyber Safety and Education. We focus mainly on teaching people how to be safe online. We have programs for parents, program for children, for senior citizens, and it's really been great and obviously very needed. So we're excited for this opportunity.
Great. Lynette, how about you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Lynette Owens. I'm the founder and global director of Trend Micro's Internet Safety for Kids and Families program. And this program is designed to educate young people around the world, as well as those who raise and care for them, about how to be great, safe, responsible, positive digital citizens. It's great to be here.
Great, thanks. Stephanie, tell us about you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Pratt. I am the head of the content department at Living Security, and our company is all about reducing human risk. We're also really focused on, especially now more than ever, realize everything is so blended. So we really have a big focus on how people can be cyber secure at home as well as just in the workplace.
Good. And last but not least, Vita. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vita Woods. Very happy to be here. I'm the founder and CEO of a nonprofit called Protect Us Kids Foundation, and we focus on providing awareness, resources, and tools to youth globally within rural, underserved, and marginalized communities on how they can protect themselves from online child sexual exploitation, as well as online child commercial sex trafficking.
Thanks. Welcome, all of you. I can't think of better people to join us today. So let's get to it. There's a lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to this topic. We're going to get into some of the more kid-specific stuff in a little bit, but I want to start first with something that a lot of families have had to deal with for maybe the last 20 months or more, and that's mixing parenting with our working from home space. There are some risks to this, but there's also some benefits to having that shared spot. So let's get going with Lynette. How does the home life dynamic change when the parents or kids are both stuck at home fighting for, Wi-Fi and such?
Well, I think as many of us who are exactly in that situation or live through that situation can attest to, you learn very quickly how close you are as a family. It tests the boundaries of your patience. But I think the biggest part of it all is how much we all have become even more resilient than we thought we probably were before we went into this. And more specifically around the blurring of the boundaries, if you will, when your home becomes classroom, restaurant, gym, movie theater, and everything else. I think there's a couple of areas that most people have been experiencing. One is that blurring of the physical spaces, and how can you put a boundary around the time that is truly school or work versus the time that is just to be with your family. I think we've all had to learn how to build those boundaries so they don't spill into each other. Some of us might still be struggling with that, by the way. The other, for kids in particular, is the screen time. And we know from a lot of research that in general, the human population that was already on the internet did so in greater amount over the last 18 months. And so for children, that means, how do you decide what healthy screen time is when they're on screens for school, as well as they need this in order to maintain relationships with friends and family while staying safe at home. And finally, I think there's the most important part of it, and that is our safety while we're there, our children's safety while we're there. When you're using a shared network with your children who are using it for school and you're using it for work, that can open up a lot of risks for you as well. So, advice like putting your kids' devices on the guest part of the Wi-Fi and yours on another part are things that we think if people aren't already aware of, should be aware of and should be practicing. But I think that that's really what this last 18 months has shown a light on, the blurring of these spaces and how we as human beings had to learn to create those boundaries.
Yeah, some of us learn pretty fast.
Mhm.
You mentioned some of the risks. So Stephanie, if you're working from home on a shared computer with family, especially young children, what kind of risk does that pose to either your business or the child who's exposed?
Yeah, so I mean, my background is in security awareness and working with with the coworkers and training them on cybersecurity, and that's what our whole company at Living Security does. And so the important thing there is to understand what are your responsibilities to your company and your organization. What are you need to make sure you're staying within the guidelines. But at the same time, it's the best idea if you can to have separate devices to keep the kids' work on kids' devices, to keep your work on your work devices. And then thinking about, I think that was a great point that Lynette brought up about how are you segregating your Wi-Fi network? Can you put certain devices or riskier devices in one space? That's not something that many people always understand how to do. So it's great if you are renting your device to make sure you reach out to the company that you're renting it from to get guidance there. It really isn't difficult. A lot of them have apps. It's very easy once somebody can kind of point you in the right direction. A lot of those, I actually generally advise people to rent their devices for that purpose, because if you're not tech savvy, you've got that support built in. And so in addition to the Wi-Fi network and some of that segregation, you can also have some firewall and other additional protections there. You can block adult websites. You can, so there's a lot of things you can do. But again, you don't have to be super tech savvy. You just, in general, you should reach out to your provider to get some guidance there.
Great, great. Patrick, in terms of keeping those boundaries, how are some of the safeguards that parents can use to make sure their work devices are secured?
I think a big part of it is to just simply act like you're at the office a little bit and have things set up separately. Don't be sharing, as we've already talked. Don't share Wi-Fi, but don't share your computer. Don't be letting them on your work laptop at the same time, because you've got files on there that they could accidentally send to somebody, confidential information potentially. So I would make sure that you take that same sort of thing when you're not in the room, just like what I say like you're in the office, but often we didn't do these things, right? But close your computer, put it to sleep. If you're going out to lunch and things like that, don't just leave it open, especially if you're sharing the Wi-Fi network, that then it becomes even more vulnerable. So we have to make sure that the tips that we've already heard are awesome ones. Just take it to that kind of attitude. You're at the office, use those same precautions. Close it, make sure you're using passwords, two-factor, and teach the kids the same thing. Make it an educational opportunity as to why you do these things. It's the same thing they should be doing on a regular basis.
That's a good point. And Vita, we were talking about, Stephanie mentioned renting computers from work. And that's something people don't think about because a lot of workplaces weren't prepared to have people go into their homes and work en masse. But kids have the same problem, right? A lot of them are getting laptops sometimes for the first time in their lives to do their work. And sometimes they don't have adequate Wi-Fi even. So that causes issues having to use hotspots. Can you
Absolutely.
explain how that's a big problem now?
Absolutely. It's interesting because all of the points that Lynette, Stephanie, and Patrick brought up for the parents definitely applies to the kids as well. More often than not, though, young people in particular, when they're using a smartphone or a laptop or any other mobile device, it's important for them to understand that they need to be careful and that they need to be on an encrypted Wi-Fi network. Otherwise, it pretty much opens up the risk of them having, their accounts hacked as well as their personal information being compromised. But it's also important to note that the use of the hotspots tends to be more prevalent amongst those children that are within low-income or rural communities, especially since the cost for broadband is out of reach for many families. So you often see many families and young people within this demographic be very much smartphone dependent and lack access to like multiple enabled devices like tablets and laptops and et cetera. So that also means that they tend to share their devices amongst the family, and being, people and human, they share the same passwords amongst their family members. So this can, of course, leave them vulnerable to having their emails and passwords compromised and their credentials being used to log into pretty much all of their family accounts. And it also, which is really prevalent, young people's personally and identifiable information being accessed as well. So there's numerous challenges associated with that. I think also malware, of course, like for all of us, is especially something that is very challenging for children, with using hotspots in particular, because again, it's about sharing the information that's available. And the internet is just a wonderful place. You can get whatever you want. You can express yourself on the internet, and you can share as many things as you want freely. But the challenge with that is also being able to let the children understand that, when you are doing that, you have to do it in a safe manner. If not, especially with file sharing and having that enabled, a hacker can easily, plant malware on their devices. And more often than not, some of these kids, especially within low income and rural communities, they receive laptops that may not often be up to par. They're older models, they lack sufficient security. So that malware can definitely pose an even greater problem within this demographic as well.
Yeah, and that's a great point because we don't know how old sometimes these laptops are. But for those who aren't getting them for the first time, they're starting really early, aren't they?
Absolutely.
So Patrick and everybody, feel free to join in. But Patrick, I remember in a previous conversation we had, you were talking about how early kids are getting online, and it was pretty surprising to me as somebody who doesn't have them. Can you tell us about some of those findings?
Yeah, it even before the pandemic, we had done some research about elementary school children and how they were using the internet, and it was pretty. We found things like 40% of these children have already chatted with a stranger online. Now we're talking about elementary kids, not high school, but elementary school kids have already chatted online. Half of those gave out their phone number to strangers. And so it really began to open up our eyes, and what caused us to create more programs for younger children. The average age now, I think, for a child getting a phone is like 10 and a half. Again, our research showed that half of those elementary school kids already had a social media profile, and yet you're supposed to be 13, right, to get on social media. Well, we were interviewing 8 to 14-year-olds. So there's definitely some issues going on out there, which made all of us, and I know it makes us, and I know it makes the other panelists realize that we have to start younger. We can't wait until they're in high school or even middle school, which is why we created, you see all around me, the Garfield program. We reached out to Jim Davis, the creator of Garfield, about the issue and the problem that's out there. And he was all for helping us create some interactive, engaging programs for young people. You can't reach a second or third grader with a PowerPoint. So we created cartoons and comic books that really help do that. But the main message from your question is that, yeah, we got to start younger and younger teaching these kids. And we have that opportunity right now. because as we've said, they're all getting online, they're doing school, they're doing homework. This is an opportunity for us as parents to be making sure that we are teaching them good safety habits that they'll take with them for the rest of their lives. You know, not sharing passwords, making good, strong passwords. What information are they posting online? Things like that. We need to be having those conversations.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
I think it's
like
important too for big companies to not just focus on how you can be secure at work. You have to think about it in a bigger picture. You need to think about, and in terms of engaging your employees, if you talk to them about how they can be secure in their own life or how they can keep their family safe, they're going to buy in. They're going to adopt those good habits and they're going to bring them back to work. We, in one of my former jobs, used Patrick's program. We had a Take Your Child to Work Day. And it was really great to have engaging conversations with parents and kids about those things. There's things parents can learn from teaching your kids about cybersecurity.
Yeah, and a lot of it's up to the parents to really take that and roll with it. But it's not always negative. Lynette, you had a little research on how parents feel about technology overall, not just doom and gloom.
Yeah, before I answer that, though, I want to just jump onto the points that were made about risks. I think in
Please.
addition to looking in addition to looking at employees holistically, meaning they're not just someone who works for you, they're also a family member who now has blurred the lines between work and home. We have to remember that schools are part of this entire ecosystem as well, and schools who are, you know, I have not gone into a school system in my 13 years of doing this anywhere that doesn't use Google Docs, that isn't signed up for Google Education. So even at very young ages, kids are collaborating in these online spaces. I've seen examples of kids using Google Docs as a chat room. And so schools have to be a part of the answer as well for families. So parents out there, if you're not aware of what kinds of apps and websites your teachers are asking your kids to be using, ask them that question. They should provide that information to you. They should also be asking for permission if they're using social media sites that might tag your child's photo or first name even to whatever it is they're doing on those sites. That's got to be an ongoing dialogue between families and schools. If it's not happening, it needs to be happening. Everybody is a part of this. You know, on the flip side to your question, Mark, yeah, the work, there was some research, very recent research published by the Digital Wellness Lab. And what was interesting was, while this study really wanted to take a look at what was happening over the summer with kids and technology, what they discovered was that parents in general have seen technology as a net positive in their children's lives. 63% said it actually supported their social and emotional well-being, and 64% said it helped to strengthen their friendships and other relationships that are important to them. Now, is that specific to a pandemic? Probably, possibly. We won't know until we're past this and we ask the question again. But the thing that worries them the most of all of the things that we worry about is screen time. How can I make sure that while they're there, I know they need to use it for work. I do want them to be able to talk to grandma and grandpa, but who's far away. But how do I make sure that that screen time is healthy? You know, it's not too much, but also that it's safe. So I think our job as a collective community of experts here, but even everyone who's listening, is to remember that not all screen time is equal. Some of it they really need. They're not going to have a choice. They're doing it for school because they're being asked to do it for school. And then there are times when it's there just for rest and relaxation, much like we use technology ourselves as adults. So I really love the model that's called the 24-hour model. I'm a big fan of it. We promote it in our program. It comes from the Digital Wellness Lab. It's the 24-hour model. And the way to think about screen time is to first have conversations with your kids about 3 things that they have to be doing every day. The first is, how much time are they spending that supports their physical well-being? Sleep, eating, exercising, playing outside. On top of that, how much time are they spending to support themselves as learners? That could be online, by the way, or not, but that's going to school, doing homework. Maybe there's a hobby or a skill that they like to practice, like an instrument, but as learners. On top of that, how many hours in a day are they spending to support the relationships that are important in their lives? Whether it's having a FaceTime chat with family or playing games online like Fortnite or Roblox with friends, those actually are supporting relationships. Whatever time is left, and there might be some, that's okay. I think parents, you have to let go of this idea of it's just all about hours. It's really about the quality of what they're doing there. And if those three things are being supported every 24 hours, it's okay to let go a little bit and let them have some fun. It doesn't mean, by the way, that they should be on it for 5, 6 hours a day. I think some of the tools that others here were talking about already, like screen time settings in devices, in apps. I applaud apps like Roblox who are automatically flagging in chat rooms if children are posting phone numbers or being asked for home addresses. They immediately take it down. So that some of the apps out there that our kids love are actually doing really fantastic work to make them better places. So I encourage everybody to read up on what all of those apps that your kids love, those games that your kids love, are doing to get better. Not all of them are there yet, by the way. Some of them can get a little better, but they're getting there.
Right. Yeah, screen time is definitely an issue. I think that carries over to the parents too. The propensity to want to work a little bit more sometimes when you're at home because it's there, um, and we run that risk of burning out. But being at home and being on screen and having the kids there um, seems to make it easier, you would think, to keep tabs on what they're doing because you're in a confined space, more or less. But that's not always the case, right, Stephanie? When they're online, they're somewhere else.
I've got two kids. My kids are 12 and 15 now, and especially early on in the pandemic, it was almost like every man to himself. There definitely was more screen time because you've got to get your job done. They also have school to do, but I'm on Zoom meetings all day. Like, get over there and do your work. So of course you're trying to look over their shoulder and see what they're doing and make sure that they've logged on. I was finding that, especially with my oldest, he would have his cell phone with his school laptop had lots of protections in place where he couldn't get to certain places. He was watching YouTube while he was supposed to be in a Zoom call. So again, it's a reminder that you definitely have to keep an eye there. And again, some of the things that Lynette talked about is, talking to your kids, engaging in what they're interested in, knowing what sites they're on, what are they looking at while they're there, as well as what are all of the settings on those sites. Again, Roblox, I know they're making some, actually, we don't need to call them out, but there's a lot of those sites that, parents, I think, wish they had more control over and more granular control, where maybe this is okay for this child and this is not okay for that child. But yeah, I think that the being able to oversee your kids, even if you're all at home, even if you're all in the same room, you're still doing your job. So it's not like you have that undivided attention to be watching exactly what they're doing. So that's why if you can, put some of those protections in place, settings, working with your school to find out what the settings are in those devices. That's important. So when you're not able to watch the full time, you can feel a little bit more confident in what they're up to.
That's great. And so Vita, I'm going to ask you get a little less positive maybe than the last questions. I'm going to because I think it's important when we're talking about security overall. These kids are still connected to the outside world, locking your doors, but you can't really lock everybody out of the online world. Um, so since it's defined broadly, what are some of the cyber crimes that might allow some of the bad guys into the home without you knowing it?
Well, unfortunately, there are quite a few, right?
Yeah.
And it appears that the landscape, especially on the internet, this continuously evolves and it's very dynamic. I think some of the most common cyber crimes that people know of course, and in my opinion, one of the most harmful is cyberbullying. I'm not sure people really understand the extent that being online has to the mental and behavioral health of people. But I think we're beginning to understand. And as much as we like to leverage technology to help us be more efficient and to do things, and it's fun and exciting, especially for young people, we've definitely at Protect Us Kids Foundation and through our research have noted that there has been a decline in mental health and interpersonal skills and quite a few other things, right? And so when you see that from within the lens of cyberbullying, and you see that one is able to leverage just the basic means of communication, leveraging technology to threaten someone or abuse or humiliate someone, this seems to be especially prevalent amongst our youth. And, if you look at physically, for most of us that didn't necessarily were online when we were children, there was bullying, right? You experienced that, but you were able to turn it off. Whether you went home or you went with your friends or you ran away from the bully or you fought the bully, you were able to turn it off. With technology, there is no off button. And the effects of cyberbullying are very targeted and direct, and are meant to be harmful. And so the psychological impact that it actually has, and it is a repeated behavior, especially on our youth, really results in them being scared or angered or shamed. And we definitely see quite a few things like teen suicide, self-harm, just from the effects of cyberbullying alone. Online predators, of course, with Protect Us Kids Foundation, that's a key focus for us. It runs the gamut and it's very different. It's very important to understand more often than not that what your children are engaging in and what they're exposed to is not just within the confines of the demographic area that they live in. They are communicating and having conversations and discussions in chat forms and on multiple social media platforms across the world. And anyone that has an attractive handle, anyone that has something that is fun to look at or to share, that's pretty much free game on the internet. So when you look at online predators, you have to understand that their primary objective is to lure young people into sexual conversations. And the purpose of this, of course, is for self-gratification, but also to serve or groom or manipulate young people to do things that otherwise they probably wouldn't do if they were actually face-to-face with somebody. And this is, for example, sharing explicit images or meeting face-to-face, which is something that we advocate strongly against in our Youth Life program and awareness trainings to youth. That latter of meeting face-to-face actually is more common, I think, than a lot of parents realize, and your children don't necessarily share that information. So based on our partners within the law enforcement community, as well as within the investigative community, we're learning that more and more children participate in meeting face-to-face for a variety of reasons. And that is something that is actually leveled because that predator actually builds that trust for that young person to leave their home or someplace familiar and to meet up with these individuals. It's also important to note that with online predators, that objective of targeting is really about the things that are most vulnerable to them, right? And this is through observation. And that's why more often than not, the internet enables one to kind of lurk and to watch. Even before they try to engage in learning about certain children, their patterns, what they like, what they don't like. And this is often demonstrated within chat rooms and the apps that they use and the social media platforms that they use as well. Remember, this is a playground and it's fun. And to most young people, they feel like they're talking to another young person. But we're very much aware that, unfortunately, there's others that are perpetrating as such, and that's not necessarily the case. Some of the other things that are probably even more prevalent, just like we like to go to the mall or shop. When we were younger, young people love to spend. And they love to have access to the latest and the greatest, whether it's technology or any type of goods. Especially those that are marketed to their population overall. We see a lot of trends with fraud targeting young people in particular, especially with social media scams, counterfeit goods that are advertised like on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You see them all over the place. You click, you can't miss them. And we also see a lot in terms of information farming, which is really identity scams that target these kids and teenagers with false employment opportunities, right? Fake credit card applications, fake contests. We see a lot of activity with that, especially during the pandemic, because, well, the kids are at home and they're bored and they see things and they want to explore. And more often than not, the opportunities that they had pre-COVID, a lot of those things were taken away. And so everything seems more interesting, and everything is a lure in regards to things that they want to have access to. And if they can get a credit card or join a contest and win something, they're more than likely inclined to actually explore those type of activities online. False money transfers. I think one of the things, especially around for those who are graduating from school or looking to apply to colleges, is the fake scholarships. That is very, very prevalent. I remember when I was growing up, there was a credit card issue. There were people that were on campus that were really pushing to get a credit card. And that was the push. Now you see that same type of push in respect to supposed scholarships and credit cards. And so teens basically go out and fill out the applications with their personal information, specifically their social security numbers. And again, these are things that are targeting young people. They do it not necessarily thinking too much about it, because it's a process, right? It's part of their overall learning. It's part of their growth and development as they move up within the education system. And so it feels normal. Everything's done online. However, once this information is provided, we are very much aware that, scammers can use this to gain access to their overall identity. And that's devastating. And it's important to note that minors in particular, they don't use their social security numbers for a number of years until they are, considered young adults, right? And so those social security numbers for young people are very attractive, the scammers, because they can use that in basically any type of checks remain unchecked on credit reports or anything like that. If you look at all of these different things, I think the common denominator is that basically young people are being targeted through these platforms. It's really all about the human psyche. I always say technology and cyber is really an extension of our social consciousness. It's an enabler, right? And so these various schemes and cyber crimes that are being leveraged are really targeting the very basic human aspect of who we are. And with children, that is even further exasperated through the never expanding space of the internet. And this makes it possible for these types of crimes to actually transcend national and jurisdictional boundaries as well.
And for me, that's an opportunity to think about phishing, which if you're an employee, you probably hear a ton about phishing at work, and it's a great conversation to have with your kids. And phishing happens not just in email, and it's not just that person who's come into wealth and is trying to get you to help get that. Again, it can be the scholarship, it can be a college application. It can also come up in DMs and social media. It can be a phone call, it can be a text message.
Absolutely.
So having conversations with your kids about, hey, this is what, if someone's sending you if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Does it pass the smell test? So teaching them to not react, to slow down and to think about things. The other thing, Vita, that you had mentioned was the identity theft and the credit reports. I saw a talk a couple of years ago with an FBI agent and had such great advice. He said that if you have young kids, you should freeze their credit, because to your point, they're not going to be accessing that for years.
Exactly.
So when they're young, lock their credit down until they need it. So that way, if that information ever got out there, that you're protecting them before they are able to access it.
And if I can jump in on that, because I was thinking the same thing about that. I recently became a grandfather, and within 2 weeks of the birth, my granddaughter had her social security card. I mean, we're still working on diapers and formula, right? And she's already got her social security card, which now makes her a potential victim for identity theft that they won't realize for 18 years until they're doing their college applications and doing out their loans or whatever for that. And so, yeah, it's definitely something to think about. And think about this too, because of social media. If you wanted to get and find out my granddaughter's information, it's all there, right? You know their date of birth, you know where she was born, you know who her grandparents are, so you know the mother's maiden name. All these security things that we think we have built everybody just posts on social media now and not thinking about the information that we're innocently putting out. We always think, oh, I'm sharing this with my friends and my family, but you forget that so many other people can see it. And so now that she has a social security number and everybody can find out when she was born, where she was born, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's really young.
Yeah, and it comes back to everything we talk about in this whole webinar series. It all comes back to education, making sure that your employees are educated, making sure that your kids are educated. And it's what you do so well, but it really takes parents to do a lot. With that, can you share with us maybe some of the best approaches to educating our kids about online safety, how to approach them about that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was said today, but if I were to encapsulate it in four ways, the first is, I think, was said earlier, starting early. This is not even something we're doing as a standard practice in our school systems in America. I think it's something we need to do. And where it's happening in school systems, it's because it's some very, you know, committed school administrators who've said, we are making this mandatory for all of our students, but it is not something that's really sort of mandated at a national level. We need to get to that point because when you're seeing adults who are falling for what I would call is spam. Sorry, phishing is a kind of spam, and ransomware comes through mostly email, and we're still falling for this how many years later since email began? And so, this is a symptom of the fact that we have not begun these kinds of levels of education at as early an age as possible. We talk about fire safety, we talk about stranger danger. Those Our children know these things. They know about smoking. They know about I remember my kindergartners when my kids were long ago kindergartners, and already they knew at kindergarten they were talking about why you shouldn't smoke. And so why aren't we talking about their life online as well and what is or isn't safe for them? The second is, I think, using tools that were mentioned before. Some of these tools are built into apps and devices, iOS, Google, all of them. There are parental controls. You can sign up for extra services with your ISP. And as Trend Micro, because we are a security software company, we just launched a product called TM Family, Trend Micro Family, that allows you to set privacy settings among multiple apps through one app rather than having to go through all of them. It will blur images so that if your child's on a web page, but not everything is bad on it, just some things are, it will only blur those images that are inappropriate for them. But that's one of many tools that are already out there. In your security software, there are settings, use them. They're already there. You wouldn't have to pay for anything. And the third is around, I think, keeping conversations going. At a young age, there are different phases our children go through as they age with regard to their relationship with technology. At the youngest ages, they are mostly passively consuming, right? They're starting to do some creation. But really, as you get into that, the first phone, the first being allowed to be on social media, now they've become a little more active, not just consuming, but also creating technology. And then when they are young adults and on their own, they're like us. They're probably doing commerce and doing many other business related transactions in addition to all the personal stuff. But at each one of those phases, having communication, constant communication, so you know what might have happened online that day at school. This is how I know that some kind of drama, whether it's a bullying incident or a protest that's a good one, some cause that they care about, is forming because they want to all organize. There are good things they do and organize online, and there are harmful things that happen. You'll only know that by communicating. And by the way, it's not just with us and our families. To the points that were made earlier about social media, we don't have norms as a society yet. So communication means best practices. If we know about it, tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell people where your lines of privacy are. It's a difficult conversation to say, I really appreciate it if you take that picture down. I don't feel comfortable with that. Or before you post a photo of my kids, could you please ask me first before you do that? These are not comfortable conversations, but we need to have them if we're ever going to get to a point where, as a society, we're deciding norms that truly keep us safe. And the last thing is by setting good examples ourselves for our children. We can demand a lot of things from them. We can set all kinds of rules. But if we're not doing them ourselves, if we are posting everything about our daily life on there, if we are texting while we're driving when we certainly shouldn't be doing that, or if we have the screen on, two screens on, a television and a device while you're eating dinner, it doesn't really support what you want to see your kids doing. It certainly doesn't support a sort of healthy family conversation either. So we've got to set good examples. So those are 4 things that I would recommend as ways to educate our kids and frankly, everybody.
Lynette, you bring up a really good point, setting the example. I know at Protect Us Kids, we follow a peer-to-peer model. And what that really means is that we give the kids a voice, a platform, and so they can express themselves and really share how they actually leverage technology. And what's fascinating about that is as much cyber awareness and things that we provide, we're kind of missing the boat in terms of how our kids actually consume and what they see. I always say they come out of the womb knowing how to swipe an iPad, right? It's very different for them. What they think are the norms, to your point, and what aren't the norms are very different. Ask a child if they feel to share, do they know the difference between nudity and explicit? And they will look at you and they will tell you a matter of fact of how they feel about it. And they're not as shocked or repulsed by seeing certain things. If anything, that's consistent, and it doesn't matter where these children are around the world, they are very curious. And they're curious and they want to express themselves. But more often than not, when being online, they don't necessarily, even if they're sitting in the room or right next to their parent, they don't necessarily sometimes feel comfortable sharing that someone direct message them a picture of their genitalia, or someone proposition them for a sexual act. That's not a normal family conversation that a lot of kids are being exposed to or families want to talk about. And so what we've learned is that providing that peer-to-peer model and letting kids educate kids with us facilitating and providing the resources and tools so they can help themselves has been extremely impactful and very powerful. And one of the major themes that young people say is that one of the reasons why they want to volunteer, for example, at Protect Us Kids, is because they want to show their parents that they can be responsible. And they want to show their parents that they actually understand how to navigate online. But most importantly, they want their parents to understand that they just want to have a voice. So that communication that you talk about is just so critical. Excellent point.
Great point. And those are great tips for not only parenting and setting the expectations, but since we're talking about the home work-life balance, it's up to employers also to set expectations for their employees working at home. So, example, if a teenager is using a company computer and clicks on an app and downloads malware, that can be a big problem for a company. So how does a company protect itself, Stephanie?
I think companies really need to make sure if they don't have a cybersecurity awareness program, they need to have one. And you can think about this from your company bottom line. Your company's reputation is at stake. They say that it's not if you're going to have a cyber attack, it's when you're going to have a cyber attack. And so it's really important to make cybersecurity part of your culture at your organization. It's not just the security team or IT's job to keep everybody safe. Everybody at the organization needs to know what their responsibilities are. And one of the things that I really believe in is when you know better, you do better. So if you're not teaching your people about how long should my password be, or am I allowed to click on these emails, or what happens if I click on something or enter my password that I shouldn't have, you need to have a constant conversation and tell people what's expected so that way they can do the right things. Again, I think most of your employees want to do the right things. They want this information. This isn't something that, again, Generation X and the older generations, this isn't something that we grew up with. So we're learning as we go. And I think everybody wants that information and that conversation to be happening. So again, having a cybersecurity awareness program, it should be someone's job to regularly putting out cybersecurity training. Living Security, the company where I work, we really believe in keeping that short and sweet. A minute, 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a 30-minute training where people are multitasking. It's just, again, making it part of the constant conversation. And if there's any, little things that you can do, back to the kids clicking on malware, again, start with, what are your company policies? Think, should your family be using your work computer? If sometimes in some families that's the only option, talk to your company about how can you safely set that computer up. Can you set another login for family use if that's the case? But if you have the opportunity, you should definitely segregate, use different devices. And again, think about how the network at your home is set up. If you have a company that you can reach out to for help, an IT department, you can start there. If you are renting your devices from your internet service provider, again, reach out to them about how you can best set that up. But yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of research. None of us are experts, but with a little bit of Googling or a little bit of asking for help, you definitely can set yourself up. But just keeping that as a constant conversation.
Okay, thank you. And if you have experienced any type of cybercrime, whether through your work computer or your home computer, definitely visit fightcybercrime.org to help. I'm going to start the promotion part of this, because one thing businesses and parents can do is participate in Cyber Safety Days. I know, Patrick, with October coming up, which is Cyber Safety Awareness Month, you have some stuff coming up that you want everybody.
Yeah, there's so much going on, and it's great that we have Cybersecurity Awareness Month to help raise the level. But I find it interesting, when the pandemic started, we saw hits to our website went up 300%, because parents want this information. So thank you for hosting this, because that was the issue, right? It was that work from home. What am I trying to do? I'm in my bedroom, working, and the kids are down the hall, hopefully doing their homework or attending classes, and not sitting on their phone and watching YouTube videos at the same time. I thought that was a great story. But so there's going to be tons of activities going on. This is a great opportunity to bring it up to work. It's a great opportunity to bring it up to your family. We have a program going on called Cyber Safety Days. It's going to be happening right now. We have them scheduled in Miami, Columbia, South Carolina, and Orlando, Florida. We are going to reach out to schools and corporations to help us get the Garfield program into the hands of the children. It was brought up, and I think it was a great point, that schools need to be a part of this. And our experience is they're not. They're talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. They know that cyberbullying is an issue. They know that these kids are doing this, but they're just not making it a priority. And I totally agree with that comment earlier, that it needs to be a priority. Who is with our kids more than us? It's school that it needs to happen. And so on our website, you can get more information about Cyber Safety Days. If you want to do one in your community, we would love to help you do that. Again, we're a nonprofit, and we provide these programs for the community to use. But in addition, we have programs for parents. They're PowerPoint style presentations that can be done in a group setting. We have a lot of companies that use those for a brown bag lunch kind of thing, right? For their employees, because most of them are parents, and it provides practical tips, kind of what we've been talking about, for parents about how to be safe online. We have programs for senior citizens, something we haven't discussed, but Veda, when you were talking about the scams, man, those people are so vulnerable, romance scams. And it's funny, we all always still joke, those of us who in the industry, about the Nigerian prince scam, right? The email we've all gotten. It's still out there. Why? Because it works. It's still bringing in money for people. But so, yeah, you think, oh my gosh, everybody's heard of that. No, it's still there, along with some new high-tech things. So we even just put out, literally a couple of weeks ago, a program for parents about gaming, to help educate them on what is going on with the games. I know that was brought up earlier about the time the kids are spending on it, that's where a lot of that chatting is going on, that these kids are making friends online with somebody who they think is their age, who goes to the elementary school down the street, and it ain't. And so we have a program for that. And also, too, was brought up, and we just released this one, a program called Vita Unplugged. It's Life Unplugged. Our target was high school kids, but to be honest, it's for all of us. And it's about screen time. It's about trying to reduce the amount of time that we spend on our devices, that our kids spend on our devices. There was a conversation, actually, Mark and I were part of a conversation yesterday where the guy talked about he's an assistant he's a coach, a referee for a soccer team. And he has a couple of teenagers who are the assistant referees. And he goes, every time I blow my whistle during the soccer match, when something happens, his assistant referees are on their phone, out on the field. They're on their phone. I mean, it's like you can't go an hour without your phone. And so those are programs that we have on our website, iamcybersafe.org. Please come use them. That's what they're there for, created by cybersecurity experts to help make it a safer cyber world.
Thanks, Patrick. And just as a reminder to the audience, we have been chatting out these links, but we will send them via email to everybody so you can see all the great work being done by our panelists. Vita, you had something you were sharing with me before.
Oh, yes, yes. Very excited. So I mentioned earlier that Protect Us Kids, and I'll just say PUC, because that's our little acronym for ourselves. We provide the awareness and the resources and tools, but what's really behind the scenes as well is that we have partnerships with mental and behavioral health entities, academia, and law enforcement and intelligence community in particular, to be able to kind of solve this puzzle. And we're in the middle as a conduit. One of the things that we really focus on, because we understand that when children are communicating, they're not just communicating with the kid in the next town or even the next state. They're communicating, as I said previously, with anyone in the world that has access, right? And because of that, that's one of the reasons why we chose our mission to be global and to really focus on the underserved, marginalized, and rural communities in particular. The month of October for us, we're very excited to talk about a huge promotion that we're doing in the country of Brazil. From the 1st until the end of October, we will be on all of the subways. The expositions, we'll have major expositions. We also will be having TV footage and video footage to get the word out in regards to how the people and the young people of Brazil should be paying attention in terms of protecting themselves. And so we're very, very excited. This is a huge achievement for us. We have other grassroots locations in Bangladesh, as well as Nigeria, Kenya, Pakistan, and of course here in the U.S., any entity in the U.S. that focuses on the demographic we serve, rural, underserved, and marginalized. And we have a very specific concerted effort within the southwest part of the U.S., primarily the refugee population in Latin America, Afghanis, as well as Haitian. Because what we notice is these populations, although most people might not necessarily think they have technology, of course they do. And if they don't have technology, especially for the young people, and especially for those who are within circumstances where they're extremely vulnerable, so this demographic is very vulnerable, they are very much high, what I like to call, unfortunately, prey for individuals who want to have access to these children. And so having the opportunity to go to Brazil and help the people and the young people in Brazil is massive. So if you want to learn more about what we do, and most importantly, I always say it's the kids, they're the heartbeat of what we do. You can go to protect-us-kids.org. It's also in the chat. And also please do, for the kids' sake, take a look at our YouTube channel and you'll see all of the amazing work that the kids in our Youth Life program have done in an effort to spread awareness as well.
If I can jump back in real quick, Veda, you brought up something, your international aspect, and this is a resource for you and everybody else, but our parents' presentation and things like that are translated in over 20 languages. So we also have that international audience. So I offer that to you and your people as well, materials put together by cybersecurity professionals already translated for you. So you and everybody else, go for
Patrick, I gotta hit you up afterwards.
it.
I'll just say, Living Security, we did a program last year and continue this year. It's called Family First. And so there's a link in the chat. We've got several videos on cybersecurity for your family and for kids and different things they're doing. I also just shared another resource from the Family First program that's got lots of help and settings for the kids' devices and all the different things they might be using, from gaming to cell phones. Again, if your company doesn't have a security awareness program, it's really important, and you should definitely talk to someone. It's a conversation that you should be having at work every day. It should be part of your culture, and you should be bringing that home.
Yeah, and I'll just bring it home here from Trend Micro. We also will be celebrating Cybersecurity Awareness Month all around the world. We're excited to launch our program for kids ages 7 to 10 called the Kids Cyber Academy. That'll actually be going live next week. And they're short sort of action, comic strip action kind of videos, followed by a Kahoot quiz, which every kid knows because they use them in school. And there are guidance and I'll even print out worksheets that we know in some of the countries where we do our work, that not doing everything online is not necessarily an option. So we've also made supplemental worksheets that to accompany the learning. But also for parent communities, we've had a relationship with PTO Today for 11 years now. And it's a program called Family Tech Talk Night. Our first ones launch in the month of October, 3 of them. We had great success because they're all virtual now. We moved to a virtual model. And I think in our first one, we will have 40 school communities around the country attending that first one. That one's already booked. That's probably a little more than we can handle at this point. But you can see all of our information about Kids Cyber Academy, our resources for parents, those virtual events for parents, and our signature video contest for youth, because Veda, as you said, we've got to include the young people as part. This is not about talking to them, it's about including them as part of the solution. They know better than we do. So that signature program we've been running for 11 years called What's Your Story? It's a video contest we've been running now in 12 countries, where we ask young people and we just step aside and hear their voice about the issues that concern them most. And we'd love all of you to help promote that to youth at the time that we launch it, which will be Safer Internet Day next February. But all of that you can see at trendmicro.com/internet-safety, and try Trend Micro Family at tmfamily.care.
Great. I apologize to everybody. We had a power outage here briefly.
Oh,
So Steffi, I don't know if you had gone yet or.
We did. We all kind of made it work. So sorry.
Wonderful. I appreciate you picking up the slack. I will also just quickly promote, we are launching our Secure Together program in late October, and we're very excited, where it's going to pair volunteers with people who are less cyber savvy to actually implement safety features on their accounts and devices, so they can be demonstratively safer by the end of their session. So we're excited to be launching that, and some of you, I hope, will be part of that with us. We are coming just at the end of the hour, so I want to thank you all for sharing your insights and information with us. It's been a really great conversation, and it's been a pleasure seeing you again. To the audience, thank you for joining us, and we will be sending out those resources for you. I'm Mark Batchelor. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, everybody.
thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Here. Guess that's it.
All right, thanks.
I don't know if we're clear, so we'll just launch off. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
It was great to
Bye.
meet you all.
Have a
I'll
great
try to
day,
get you up
everybody.
on LinkedIn.
All right, bye-bye.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.